Alright, so in this video we're going to learn how to use the Polygon angle sum theorem. And basically what this theorem does is it finds the measure of all of the interior angles of a polygon. And that theorem is sum, or S, is equal to 180 times n minus 2, and n is the number of sides. So basically, when you're given a polygon, you're going to take the number of sides, plug it into this formula, and it's going to tell you the measure of all the interior angles together. Alright? So let's try these three. We have a heptagon. So a heptagon, a heptagon has 7 sides. So n is equal to 7. I'm just going to take 7 and plug it in for n. I'm not writing the S because I'm not using it right now. So I could just use 180 times n minus 2. But I know that the S stands for sum. So I'm just plugging that in. 180, 7 minus 2, plugging in 7 for n. 7 minus 2 is 5. Have to use order of operation, so I do parentheses first. And 180 times 5 is 900. So the sum of the interior angles of a heptagon is 900. Let's try this one. A pentagon has 5 sides. So I'm going to do the same thing. 180 times 5, I'm plugging in 5 for n, minus 2. 180 times 3, and that is 540. So in a pentagon, the sum of all of their angles is 540, or all of its angles is 500, interior angles is 540. And the last one here is a 35 gun, so of course it has 35 sides. So n equals 35. So 180 times 35 minus 2. 180 times 33, because 35 minus 2 is 33. And I'm going to need a calculator for this one. So 180 times 33, that gives me 5,940. Right. So the sum of the interior angles of a 35 gun is 5,940. And so we found the measure of all of the interior angles of these 3 polygons. Alright, so now let's take a look at finding the measure of one angle in a regular polygon. The only added piece is that we're simply finding the sum of all of the angles and dividing by the number of sides. The number of sides is going to be the same as the number of angles. So using that same theorem here, 180 times n minus 2, then we're simply just going to divide by the number of sides to get the measure of one angle. So let's try these 3. A hexagon has 6 sides. So we're just going to take it and plug it in here. 180 times 6 minus 2 divided by 6. 180, 6 minus 2 is 4. And 180 times 4 is, I think it's 720, but I just want to make sure. It is 720. All right. So it's going to be 720 divided by 6, because 6 is the number of sides. So my answer is 120. So the measure of one angle, or the measure of each angle in a regular hexagon is 120 degrees. The sum of all of the angles together would be 720. All right, I did a lot of work here. To cut down on space, let's do the next 2. I'm not going to put all of my steps, but I'll walk you through what I'm doing. So 16 gon, 180 times 16 minus 2. Because it has 16 sides, so I'm just going to find the sum of all the angles together. So 16 minus 2 is 14. 180 times 14 is equal to 2,520. Then I just divide by the number of angles, or the number of sides. It's the same thing, which is 16. So again, the only added piece from the previous three problems is that we're just dividing by the number of sides to get the measure of one angle. All right. And our last one here is a pentagon, and of course a pentagon has 5 sides. So we learned before that a pentagon has 540. The measure of all the angles are 540. But just to show you again, if we do 180 times 5 minus 2, that gives me 540. Because 3 times 180 is 540. The number of sides is 5. So let's divide by 5. And that is 108. All right. So we found the measure of each of these, of one angle in each of these regular polygons. All right, so we're going to use the Polygon angle sum theorem to find the value of x, or to find the value of each one of these angles in this polygon. Notice that it is not a regular polygon because the angles are not the same. All right, but we're going to use the Polygon angle sum theorem to find the measure of each one of these angles. All right, so the first thing we want to do, the number of sides, we have 4 sides. So 180 times 4 minus 2, 180 times 2 is 360. And most students just remember that a 4-sided figure has, the sum is 360. All right, so any quadrilateral, which is what this is, the sum of the interior angles is going to always be 360. All right, so now let's find the measure of each one of these angles. Well, if we know that their measures together have to equal 360, we could set up an algebraic equation. So we could say that 2x plus 2x plus x plus x is equal to 360. And let's just solve it. 2x plus 2x plus x is 6x. And divide by 6, x is equal to 60. So these two angles are x. So this angle is 60 degrees and this angle here is 60 degrees. How do we find the measure of these two angles? Well, we just plug in x. So 2 times 60, so 2 times x, that is 120. So the measure of each one of these angles is 120 degrees. All right, so we found the measure of each angle. How could we check it? Well, if we know that together they have to equal 360, just add them. 120 plus 120 is 240, plus 60 plus 60 will in fact give you 360 degrees. All right, so we found the measure of each one of these angles in this polygon. All right, so let's try these last two problems. It says find the sum of the interior angles. The sum of the interior angles is given below. Find the number of sides. And so we're given the sum of the angles. We want to find n, or the number of sides. And so what we want to do, we're going to use the same formula. Sum equals 180 times n minus 2. But instead of plugging in the number of sides, because we don't have that, that's what we're looking for, we're going to plug in our sum, because that is what we're given, and then we're going to solve for n. All right, so our sum here is 1080, not 18, 1080 equals 180 times n minus 2, and we're going to solve for n. So I'm dividing both sides by 180, so just solving the equation using inverse operations. 1080 divided by 180 is 6. And we're left with n minus 2. We don't need the parentheses anymore because we're no longer multiplying by 180. So now we just have that one-step equation left, adding 2. So n equals 8. All right, and of course you could check your answer by just plugging it back into the formula. If n equals 8, 8 minus 2 is of course 6, and 6 times 180 does in fact give you 1080. All right, so now let's try this last problem here. Let me use a different color to, my work is not all mixed up. So that's going to be 1980 is equal to 180 times n minus 2. Again, dividing by 180. All right, that is 11. N minus 2, and then we're going to add 2. 11 plus 2 is 13. So n is 13 for a figure that has a sum of 1,980 for the interior angles. All right, and so we've reached the end of our lesson here. I want to thank you for learning with me. If you haven't already, please comment, like, share, and subscribe. And again, I want to thank you for learning with me.